Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
I don't know how to play this. We find ourselves in uncharted waters this morning. Industrial action that enjoys massive public support. Turns out it gets ignored by the media. When they think they've still got a dog in the race, the Mail and the Times and the Telegraph and all the usual suspects in broadcast media will pile in to tell you how you mustn't trust these people when they tell you they have to go on strike. Oh, trust them when they're diagnosing that rash that your kid's got on their back or they're removing a tumour from your brain. But don't trust them when they tell you that they have to go on strike. And they've done their best. They've shot their bolt. They've gone all in and they've lost. I can't remember this ever happening before. How many years have we been spending our mornings together now? So it's over 10, I think. I don't know how to... I honestly don't know how to cover this. Luckily, I don't have to. You'll help me. It's not an argument. I know you just lies, damned lies and statistics, and of course there are plenty of people who have been satisfactorily persuaded that you shouldn't trust doctors. Again, you trust them to cut the abscess out of your grand's leg or give your mum a new hip. Okay, I know you do, but you don't trust them to understand the terms of their own contract. You don't trust them to actually properly understand and explain what it is that they're being ordered to do for the rest of their working life. I know that some people are in that category. We trust them to cut out your tumours, but you don't trust them to be able to read a contract. That's fine. I know you exist, but you're in a minority, and that's weird. That is weird. How many times have I said to you that supporting every strike is as stupid as supporting none of them? Equally stupid positions. Every time. Brothers, comrades, tools down. Every time. Every single time. Yeah, I'm four square behind them. I'm behind the Boilermakers. I'm behind the train drivers. I'm behind... That's just silly. Sometimes they'll be right, sometimes they'll be wrong. But then on the other side of the coin, and indeed... It pains me to say this. All I ever wanted to be as a kid was a newspaper journalist. It pains me to say this, but almost every newspaper in the land does come out against every single industrial action for fairly obvious reasons, in that they are employers. You know, the guys that own newspapers are just like your boss. They want you to have as few rights as possible so that they can treat their journalists, their print workers and their staff like scum. Get them to be thankful for having a job at all. That's what you do if you're a boss in this country. Not all bosses are bad, I accept that. But generally speaking, they all quite like the idea of not having to treat us with as much dignity, respect and reward as natural justice might demand we receive. They're all into that. So that's why the newspapers do it. There's no big mystery there. Of course they're against the idea of workers bargaining collectively to improve their conditions. Of course they're against the idea of a workforce mobilising in order to make a powerful political and professional point. Of course they hate it. They hate it. But they've lost. And that is really, really weird. I'm not being glib or facetious or anything like that today. I'm not sort of setting this up in a lazy tabloid style, but from the other side of the usual tabloid argument. I don't know how to handle this. What do we do now? The newspapers are pretending it isn't happening. In fact, they're doing more than that. They're going, look over there, doctors being bad, Don't mention the strike. Look over there, there's some doctors being bad. So you turn to the front page of the Times today, and what's the headline? You think I'm making this up? Front page of the Times. I am not a conspiracy theorist, but if you honestly think that the Mail and the Times have both ended up with front page stories which enable them to sort of point over there and say, look, some dodgy doctors over there, don't mention the strike. If you think that's a coincidence that both of these stories appear in the two most prominent right-wing newspapers in the country on the day that a publicly supported junior doctors strike is unfolding for 48 hours, then, well, I doff my cap to you, because that's some forelock you're tugging. It really is. Absolutely breathtaking forelock you've got there, sir, or madam. So the front of the Times today, blundering doctors get protection from blame. What's the key word you take from that headline? Blundering. Possibly blame. Blundering doctors. Yeah, those blundering doctors with their blundering ways and their ludicrous broken stethoscopes. All those dodgy doctors, they're terrible. Blundering doctors get protection from blame. Almost every junior doctor in the land has voted for industrial action, which is unfolding today. Almost every single one of them. The numbers, I've said it to you before, but I'll say it again. The numbers they got in response to that strike ballot, they'd only really look familiar in North Korea. Such was the scale of support for that strike. Such is the scale of support for that strike among the actual balloted, that the numbers are in the high 90s. Okay, so the numbers are in the high 90s. Front page of the newspaper of Record doesn't even mention the fact that they're on strike today. Just tells you that if they're blundering, they're going to get protection from blame. You dig into this story, do you know what it's really about? It's encouraging doctors to come forward if mistakes have been made, and saying if you come forward and admit it, you'll be treated more leniently than if you cover it up and hide it and hope that nobody notices. It kind of is a reflection of how the British justice system works as well. It's why you get a shorter sentence for a guilty plea than you do for a no guilty plea, having been found guilty subsequently. But whatever you do, don't think that deeply about this. They don't want you to. Do not think about this issue. Just get cross about blundering doctors being protected from blame. Don't think. Stop thinking, all right? Then you turn to the front of the Mail. Again, do not start thinking about this. They do not want you to think, because new mums are being sent home too soon. Oh, those dodgy old doctors sending mums home too soon. How dare they do this? It's outrageous. Is there a strike today? Let's have a look at the front of the Times. No strike there. No strike on the front of there. The Daily Express banging on about the EU. No surprises there. Telegraph, any mention of the strike on the front of the Telegraph? Nope. But there's a cold sore that's linked to Alzheimer's, if you are looking for some health news. Why? On the previous days that the doctors' strike was unfolding, they couldn't get enough of it, could they? They couldn't get enough of telling you how little trust you should have in these disgusting, meddling, blundering medics with their blundering ways, and they're sending mums home too soon. They couldn't get enough of it. Today, it's like a sort of empty fag packet. They've got nothing left at all. They've done their best, and the public, for once, have refused to swallow it. Now, I don't mean that to sound like a criticism of the British public. I really don't, because it isn't a criticism of the British public. I think most industrial actions that I've spoken to you about over all these years, most industrial actions are nuanced. There are perfectly powerful arguments for not supporting the people on strike. The tube drivers, historically, are not the easiest people on the planet to support. I personally don't think there's anything wrong with, quotes, working class, end quotes, people earning 50 grand a year for driving a train. I quite like that. I'm a little bit backwards and old-fashioned that way. I don't think that the class that you're born into should be a limit upon how much money you can earn doing a job that does involve, after all, the safety of everybody on board. But hey, like I say, I'm old-fashioned. I don't know how to do this story today. What do you do? What do you do? I mean, I'm sort of the token lefty on this radio station, so ordinarily my job is to sit here telling you that you're being lied to. But you don't need me to tell you that. You know that now. The public support for this strike is unprecedented. So the massive majority of the media is just ignoring it completely. Is looking the other way. Look over there. Look over there. There's a mum being sent home too soon. Look over there. There's a blundering doctor not getting the blame for their blunders. If the media doesn't know how to handle it, what the hell do we do? It's a slightly shaming admission that most of our conversational agenda is set by the newspapers. It won't always be like that. I think we're living in an era now where that is going to change. But the newspapers, whether you buy one or not, they set the tone. Most broadcast newsrooms that I've worked in go through the newspapers first. You get your wire from Press Association, but that's not much use to the tabloids because they only deal in facts. When you're looking for the feeling, when you're looking for the nuance, for the tonality of a tale, you turn to the newspapers. You find out what they're thinking. It used to be, when I started on Fleet Street, that you get a broad spectrum of views on a whole variety of issues. You don't anymore. You really don't anymore. All you get from the British newspapers, with a couple of glorious exceptions, is whatever the billionaire tax avoider owns it wants you to get. There's really no nuance to that or subtlety at all. I know it's patronising to say that if you don't believe it, but as you've heard me say a million times before, it's a hell of a lot easier to fool people than it is to convince them they've been fooled. So how do we discuss this issue today? How do you and I discuss this today? I don't know. I don't know what question to ask you. Do you support the doctors? That's redundant now. You do. 65% of the nation does, 17 don't. Hey, that's, game over. And it's gone up as the industrial action has escalated. So the government crossing their fingers and hoping we'd all just get a little bit hacked off with these doctors moaning about their jobs and getting paid fortunes, almost as much as a plasterer in some cases. It's absolutely ridiculous. We don't know how to do it. And I don't know how to do it as someone who often, perhaps arrogantly, likes to see himself as an antidote to the unleavened diet of bile and division that you get from the British media. I have this lovely, easy, open goal every day of just putting my hand up and going, oh, would you mind awfully if I introduce some facts to this conversation rather than just undiluted feelings? Would you just allow me for a moment to explain to you what happens if you think about this story instead of simply swallowing wholesale whatever it is we're back to the billionaire tax-avoiding media owners, whatever it is they want you to do. I don't know how to play this. I honestly don't know what to do. Because, well, the doctors are winning, but they're still on strike. And they're still getting contracts imposed on them. So I'm going to break my golden rule now and ask you to get your crystal balls out. So I hate doing this normally because it is not, in my opinion, particularly instructive or entertaining to ask people to describe a future that hasn't happened yet and may never happen. But today it works because today we are on uncharted territory. The public support the doctors. The organs and outlets to which we turn for our news have given up trying to dissuade the public from that position. They've given up. I mean, this front page here, new mum sent home too soon. Anyone who tries to punt that to you as a news story today holds you in the lowest of lowest regards. Even more so, the front of the Times, blundering doctors get protection from blame. The Mail and the Times are telling you today that these two stories are more important than almost every junior doctor in the country being on strike at the moment. That's how little they think of us. That's what they're telling us. Oh yeah, you're too stupid to work it out for yourself. Just look over there, there's a blundering doctor and a mum being sent home too soon. The public support the strike. And I am embarrassed and ashamed to admit to you that as a journalist who also supports the strike, I don't know how to talk about it now, because there's no point me taking out my cudgels and started lobbing rotten tomatoes at the other side. The other side have lost. But the doctors haven't won. They've won your support. They haven't won this battle. They haven't won this war, which is why now is the time to get your crystal ball out and tell me what you think is going to happen next, or if you are a junior doctor, what is going to happen next in your life. The Health Secretary is still insistent upon imposing this contract upon the profession, still insistent upon imposing this contract upon the profession, despite the fact that 97% of them don't want it and 65% of the public are behind them, four square. I'd cautiously suggest that of the 17% of the public that aren't, only half of them could probably put together a cogent argument as to why. I think we had a couple on the show last time we did this. So my favourite was the fella in Orpington who said, all my friends are against the doctors. That proves that public support is against them as well. Except it really doesn't. And this is uncharted water for me. Hit the numbers now, you will get through. 0345 6060 973. A lot of talk at the moment about democratic deficits and that sort of thing, about lack of sovereignty, lack of insight. If the public are 65% behind the doctors and the government is pressing ahead with a policy designed to denude them of dignity and, they believe, safety in the workplace, then we don't live in a democracy at all, do we? What's going to happen next? What do you want to happen next? What would you do if you were a junior doctor? They don't want to keep striking. They don't want to carry on downing stethoscopes and manning picket lines. They want to get back to looking after us, to looking after you and your mum and your gran and your kids and you. That's what they want to do. But we're caught between a rock and a hard place. What do you think is going to happen next? And the reason why I'm breaking my golden rule and inviting you to get your crystal balls out is because I honestly think that this is an unprecedented situation in modern Britain. I'm 44 years old, so I remember the miners' strike, largely because my dad covered it and we didn't see him for 14 months. I remember the miners' strike. I know what industrial action looks like. We live in a post-strong union era at the moment. History suggests the pendulum will swing back once we all realise how badly we're being shafted. But don't hold your breath. I've never known this to happen before. I could be wrong. You're going to ring me up and give me an example. But, I mean, is this why general strikes happened? Because one section of society engaged support on such an epic level that we actually felt duty-bound to join in? A general strike wouldn't work now because most workforces aren't unionised. What happens next? 0345 6060 973. Phone lines are wide open on this one. If you're quick, you can grab one. What happens next? What happens next? The propaganda war seems to be over. The right-wing press have thrown up their arms in defeat. Some of those really blindly loyal, usually people who think they're right-wing but aren't. They've just been persuaded that if they call themselves right-wing, then they can think that they're winners in life, despite the fact that the people who are truly winning in British society are laughing all the way to the bank at them. What happens now? What happens next? 17 minutes after 10 is the time. Sorry to go on. I've got this sneaking suspicion that talking about the future of doctors in this country might actually be quite important.